you so much for all your help. On to New Hampshire.
Welcome to Luce Talk. My name's Edward Luce. I'm the US columnist for the Financial Times. And we're here at the Epic Grill in downtown Washington, D.C. in the week of the kickoff of the Republican primary season. We'll be doing this every week for the duration of what promises to be a roller coaster, high tension and dramatically interesting presidential season, starting with the Republican primaries. The race kicked off this week in Iowa on Tuesday night, which resulted in a cliffhanger of a finish in which Mitt Romney, who's still the presumptive frontrunner, won by a narrow 8 votes, just 8 votes, over Rick Santorum, the former Pennsylvania senator, who had, until a few days earlier, literally been nowhere in the polls. Washington is obviously a town that is packed to the rafters with high-caliber pundits, and from time to time we'll be asking them for their take on the week's events. With me today is Bill Galston from the Brookings Institution, also a former Clinton administration official, and Norm Ornstein of the American Enterprise Institute. If you stand right back and you're a foreigner from outside of America, observing with great fascination this very idiosyncratic process you've got, there are going to be some alarm bells going off that number 2 and number 3 in the results yesterday were people who are Ron Paul, namely Ron Paul and Rick Santorum, considered to be beyond the sort of realm of viability.
Well, let me say something about that. You have the staunch conservatives, the sorts of people who tend to associate with the Tea Party. You have the mainstream conservatives, the sort of people who go to Rotary clubs or even country clubs. You have the libertarians, and then you have the fourth group that they call the disaffecteds. And when you decode what they're talking about, it looks a lot like blue-collar, white workers who tend to cluster in the industrial states and who used to be Democrats when I was a boy but haven't been for a generation. And what you find in Iowa is that each one of those first 3 groups, has found a champion, right? Ron Paul is the uncontested winner of the Libertarian primary, and Rick Santorum is the contested but very successful winner of the staunch conservative primary, and Mitt Romney is the candidate of the Main Street Republicans. Overall, the Main Street Republicans are a bigger share of the party than any of the other 3. On the other hand, if the race gets to the industrial states, then the disaffecteds, to the extent that they vote, may have more of a voice than they did in Iowa or will in New Hampshire.
Remember that last time on the Democratic side, we had Barack Obama emerge with a slingshot victory in Iowa. Looked like he was going to sweep, but then he lost New Hampshire to Hillary Clinton, and that created major headaches. What will be interesting, by the way, in the next 6 days is to see which independent groups begin to run advertising in New Hampshire hitting Romney. You're not going to see it from Santorum, who doesn't have the money. You're not going to see it from Gingrich, who said he's going to basically rely on the free media and not on 30-second attack ads.
And he'll get a lot of it if he speaks that way.
You may see some of it from Paul, although probably not a huge amount. It wouldn't surprise me at all that some independent Democratic groups begin to do a lot of anti-Romney advertising, and some of it may be drawn from ads that were produced when Romney ran for Senate in Massachusetts. And so brace yourself for what will probably be a nasty campaign in a world where we're used to them, but which may even begin to unsettle the jaded among us.
Now, no American political season is complete without its quintessential American moments that could only really happen here, from candidates standing in tanks to inhuman microphone screams. This week's moment, in my view, was Ron Paul's speech following the Iowa caucus results on Tuesday night.
Back in the old days, in the early 70s, Nixon said, "We're all Keynesians now," which meant that even the Republicans, they accepted liberal economics. He says, "I'm waiting for the day when we can say we're all Austrians now."
It's safe to say that there aren't too many Austrians living in New Hampshire. However, the live free or die New England state is probably the most well-known and hardy stronghold of libertarianism Now, if ever Ron Paul is going to make a stand and challenge Mitt Romney, the presumptive nominee, it will be in New Hampshire next week. I'm Edward Luce for the Financial Times in Washington, D.C.